Hey everyone, today we're gonna jump back into my most viewed video on the channel and probably like the first time I kind of broke into the content creator sphere of Flesh and Blood. But this was the Everfest era Rhinar OTK list. This was before Hardened Crosstrap got banned, which was probably thanks in part due to deck lists like this. Hayden Dale was also playing this at the time. It was pretty popular and it was really powerful. The main way that it won was you would just assemble basically like a 2-card combo with just Blood Rush plus Swing Big. With Hardened Crosstrap, you could pay for your claws, and with Goliath Gauntlet, you would just present 22 damage. Even if you drew poorly on your Blood Rush Tron and you just drew reds, the combo still works just fine. So we're gonna kind of see what's changed with heavy hitters. If anyone's interested in watching a more in-depth deck tech on that, most of this information is still going to be relevant. The lines are going to be relatively the same with some minor tweaks and changes. So there's also 2 other videos you could watch from mine in the past, back when I used to really be a brute gamer. And that's going to be how to use Sand Sketch Plan, because we're also still on this card for the time being. And finally, justifying why I'm using Deep Blue in the list and not the Bark Bone strapping. And if you're interested in watching this is a little bit more convoluted, but basically the resource curve works the same, if not better, with the flexibility of Deep Blue. Also, reducing variance in your deck is really important for this like combo focus build, because if you take damage to go for the Blood Rush line and you need additional resources and strapping just rolls you a 1, you kind of have just like punted the game for no reason, whereas like Deep Blue converts resources pretty well and is like always reliable. Also has the added benefit of being able to sync non-attacks if you have to, for instance, play like a discard effect. And it does come at the expense of 1 less blocking value, but I don't really think that matters too much, especially with the addition of Bonebreaker. But let's jump into the updated list. So we're looking here at our main board equipment, which is going to be Deep Blue, Apex Bonebreaker, which is our newest edition, and also a previous edition that should have been added, but I haven't covered this deck in a while, is Scowling Fleshbag. This is very powerful, and so this is going to be your new equipment setup. Beaten Trackers replacing Scabskin Leathers. Scabskin Leathers are in the sideboard for matches where you need to block more and where you need to basically get extra health out of armor. But Beaten Trackers are just really powerful, letting you just immediately fire off Savage Feast and not have to worry about it. So really powerful equipment, especially in a 20 health format like Blitz. Going into the main deck, if we cross compare here, not too much has changed. We still see the same shell of Rainbow, Barrage, and Beatdown, Savage Feast, CNC, Pack Hunt, Massacre, Alpha, Rampage, Beast Within, along with some weird utility blues and a couple power cards in the red. I would say the main thing that's changed is just our yellows, but our yellows have gotten a lot better, right? Agile Windup, right? Triggers Rhinar's Intimidate ability, gives your claw go again, and then on the following turn lets you make an agility token. Or if you go turn 1, you can not only intimidate your opponent, maybe push damage, but you at least get to make an agility token. If you're going second and you draw it, you can discard this right and start your first turn of the game with an agility token. So it's just really good, right? The 2 block is a downside, but you don't really care that much. Send Packing, I think, is the hugest upgrade to the yellow slot, especially with the addition of Apex Bonebreaker. This lets you block with, let's say a card plus an armor, and you still get to send CNC or Send Packing in for 7 on that breakpoint. Really good. We're running Show No Mercy. Now I do need to give a caveat. I think that 3 costs are a little too cost restrictive in Rhinar. So the traditional Blood Rush Bellow math is that you kind of want 2 costs, because like your claws are going to cost 4 for the turn. So like 6 is just kind of easier to cover. 3s are hard to justify. Now the thing is, if you're on Deep Blue, you actually can just guarantee a red to turn into a 3-pitch for Show No Mercy, which for my very limited testing, because I want to just run a couple games before I put this out on the channel, it doesn't seem terribly unplayable. But there are sideboard cards, because we're not running AB, because you do not go long against the Emperor, and you're probably just going to try to kill them as fast as possible. If you have more Emperors and you feel that you need AB for your list, that's fine. Then we'll have to cut different cards. But I think that this is a card that's traditionally kind of on the chopping block a little bit, depending on what your matchup is. The full Intimidate condition is kind of hard to meet unless if you're in slower matchups or if you're just high rolling really well. If you're in a slower matchup and you can wait to stack your Barrage and Beatdowns, I think it's really powerful. But if you can't hit that final clause, it's just a little too rough to really get full max value out of. But block 3, perfectly fine. Only other additions are going to be Smashback Alehorn in the blue slot. It's a 2 block, which sucks. And we're replacing High Roller for this. So if you want more 3 blocks, I think you just go back to High Roller, but Agility plus Mighty Token is really strong, right? Like, this is just good card conversion, regardless if you're going first or second. And Agilities aren't super important for this deck, but I think making a couple of them is kind of powerful because it lets you just keep like larger hands. And if you do have larger hands, that's when Show No Mercy can actually become playable. Or like you play like a Pack Hunt or some other, you know, like Intimidate effect into your Show No Mercy. I think that's like the only time that you can really push it over. So Agility is kind of good, but you know, it's not the most crucial part of the deck. The only other benefit for Agility tokens traditionally is it just lets you, for instance, send like double disruptive effects. I did have a game where I played CNC into send packing, which felt really strong off an Agility. But it's entirely possible that these Agility makers should just go back to being 3 blocks, but like free go again is kind of hard to argue with, so we're trying them out for now. When we go into our inventory, it's kind of obvious which hero we care about here. Now the thing is that Blitz is kind of centered around, I would say, like the Emperor, Dash, and Rhinar at the moment. Also some Prism, but I don't think this list cares about Prism at all. I think you naturally are just going to be able to beat her. So, you know, we're thinking a little bit about those matchups, and also Victor as well. Although, just from a fundamental game plan perspective, you also should not really have a problem with heroes like Victor or Bravo. I know the Blitz format's a little bit more diverse, so some of you may have different experiences with that. I'm just kind of going off of like what I've, you know, kind of seen, you know, in like the tournament scene. Briar is also specifically kind of difficult, but some of these double up into those heroes, right? So into heroes like Victor or aggro decks, right? So that would be like the Mirror, Dash, Briar. Pulping's pretty good, right? Because even if you whiff and you get unlucky, they still have to give you 2 cards to stop the go again, which pretty much means it's almost guaranteed to have it into, for instance, like the aggro decks. Like if you play this into Briar, like is she really going to give you 2 cards just to stop the go again if you get unlucky and whiff? Maybe, like if she's made an embodiment and she has like a, you know, redundant non-attacks, but for the most part, that deck like wants to be aggressive, and if they take too much of an off-tempo plan, you can kind of spike the game. Smashing Performance is mainly for Dash, obviously. If you get to go lucky and you go first and you draw this, then they just never get to have Pounder and play the entire game, so this essentially becomes like 6 extra value, and especially on turn 0 is really huge. If you're able to kill Pounder like immediately, I don't really see how you lose the game, basically. If you're going second, they rarely boost on turn 0, so you probably still get the max 6 value out of it. So really powerful card. Even if you only get it like at the tail end of their Pounder, even if it's like only on 1 counter left, like let's say like worst case scenario, they only have 1 counter left on it, it's still basically 2 extra value. So it's just like a 2 card 8, which is still fine. You can also kill Tekla Core if you see it later in the game, which is also perfectly fine, right? Depending on when they get the Tekla Core. If you get it when they first play the Tekla Core, then you're denying them 4 resources. So if you want to value that at like 4 points of value, maybe that's like a fine calculation. Really powerful into Dash. This tech could be something else depending on what your local meta is. This is just like, I'm just thinking like, what do most people probably play against in their local Blitz scene? And my assumption is that they play against Dash, because Dash is like powerful and popular. Erase Face doubles up, right? This is just like a time walk if it hits against Dash, but it's also really good into the Mirror, right? So if you're playing against like KO or Rhinar, this stops like the Brute Claws, right? Which is going to be relevant for Blood Rush Bellow, right? Now it's not relevant for everything, but you know, I mean, like if you're playing against Rhinar, it shuts off Barraging, it shuts off Blood Rush. So, you know, that's relevant. And if you're playing against Briar and they're on like the CMH builds, it stops like their fusion effects. So they can't Earth Fuse, right? If they want to play a CMH, they can't put their Earth card, you know, on the bottom to meet the CMH clause. So the CMH would just go away that turn. There's probably some other niche decks it works into. If you want, this could be like Humble based on like what you're playing against in your local scene, right? Like, or it could just be something else from the card pool. Like if you're playing against like more Dory, you could have Unmovable. So you can tailor this to your liking. This is like kind of like the maybe board. I would even say like Show No Mercy could get dropped down into here and you could have 38 cards and probably like 8 that you could flex around. Scab Skins is down here into slower matchups where you may need to roll scabs to try to get more than 1 action point per game compared to something like Beaten Trackers. Like if you're playing against like a full blockout fatigue deck like Victor, or if Bravo is trying that against you, and you need more space, and like if you roll a 1 you don't lose because they haven't been attacking you, then that's where you want to play this. And then if we go down into our maybe board, we have some other cards that I've been thinking about. I think that these are more speculative. Crown of Providence is interesting because you are a combo deck, right? So the main thing here is that you're kind of blocking out until you get your perfect Blood Rush hand, or like you're looking for like, you know, to slow the game down with your Apex Bonebreaker plus your CNC. So Crown of Providence letting you be a little bit more patient, or maybe fish for that like good pop-off turn is kind of important. Also, like Emperor plays CNC, right? So you kind of want better CNC protection compared to, for instance, like Scowling Fleshbag. Tome of Fiendal is really powerful, especially if you're on Beaten Trackers, right? Because as soon as you can pop them, specifically you put like the Tome of Fiendal in your arsenal and then you draw Blood Rush, and then when you play the Blood Rush you get your action point. Really good at popping off, right? So like this would maybe be a consideration if you want higher variance in your deck, right? Because like if you just like don't draw this when you need it, it's really bad, but like it lets you high roll like crazy. So some more considerations, but that's the main changes to the list. So not much, but really important upgrades. I do think Rhinar is like probably gonna be like top tier contender for the upcoming Blitz season. I don't know when the skirmish is, I've forgotten. I'm pretty sure it's like pretty far in the future, but if people just want to, you know, have a list to try out at locals or for, you know, whatever smaller events you're going to. And I'll also get some gameplay up so we can kind of get some point of reference for how these new cards play out. But until next time, thank you for watching.